Hey, this is George. Have you ever heard of Anchor.fm? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. Number two, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can hear it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Check out Anchor.fm on the iOS and Android systems.
Need psychotherapy online or in person? Check out tinyurl.com/THT psychotherapy. The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1@gmail.com.
Before we get to the interview, I just want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Union Signs and Printing. Union Signs and Printing is a union sign shop located near Chicago, Illinois, that specializes in the production of corrugated plastic lawn signs used in applications ranging from political and election usages to unions, schools, and businesses. They also produce a vast array of other products, including American-made, union-printed t-shirts, banners, bio cards, literature, door hangers, business cards, and trifold. Get a hold of Union Signs and Printing at 815-740-1688 or find them on the internet at unionsignsandprinting.com. And don't forget to tell them you heard about their services on the George Brassey podcast.
Hello.
I'm so glad to welcome our next guest to the program. Monica Gordon is a dedicated community advocate whose priorities include equitable education and strengthening economic development in the Southland. Monica, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much, George. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So, Monica, tell us a little bit about who Monica Gordon is, the person that became such a great community advocate.
Well, I appreciate that compliment. So I was born and raised in Chicago on the West Side. And I would say that I've always been concerned about my community. I grew up in a community where there was a lot of different things going on. There was gun violence. There was disparities in education. There are food deserts. But I would say also there was a strong community in terms of community values. There was a lot of love in our neighborhood. And so when after I graduated from undergrad and I went to grad school, I ended up coming out here to study at Governor State University in my early 20s. And so I did notice out here some of the deficits with economic development, particularly on the more east side of the Southland. I also became involved in different organizations such as PADS, Public Assistance to Deliver Shelter. While I still continue my community advocacy as well in the city while I was volunteering for the NAACP West Side branch. So I have a career that's in education, medical sales, but I would say around 4 years ago, I left my career in medical sales, which was a great career, by the way, to go to Springfield and learn the lobbying process. And during that time, I was selected to become the executive director, or initially it was the interim executive director of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus Foundation, which was a great role. I got to get a lot of additional operational experience in and also fundraising experience. Now, the first time I received operational experience, I would say when I was promoted in medical sales and I served as the associate manager of regional operations. So I think the experience working for a foundation really complemented that experience. And then a seat opened up with the state Senate. Toys Hutchison had left to become the cannabis czar at the time. And so I took a risk. I took a leave of absence from the Black Caucus Foundation and I ran my race. And I would say my two biggest priorities were education and economic development. And so I did not win that race, but I want to be clear that I am very happy with the person that did win the race, Senator Patrick Joyce. He's been an amazing partner in the community all over the district. In all counties. So I am very pleased that, he's our senator. Of course, I wanted to win, but it was not time. That wasn't in the cards for me to do that. So then I came over to Chicago State University, where I'm at now, where I was presented with an opportunity to fight for equitable education, but in a different way. And so I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations. So in terms of legislation that impacts higher education and impacts Chicago State University, as well as building relationships and partnerships with community-based organizations. That's what I currently do.
Monica, when you ran for state senate, it was during the beginning phases of the coronavirus, and now, as we record this, you're running the Board of Trustees at Prairie State College in the midst of the pandemic. How does that change your campaign?
Well, it will look quite different. So I would say at the end of my Senate race, my Senate campaign, that's when the pandemic became more apparent. I would say March 17th, that was election day. It looked different than any other election day I've ever experienced. Mm-hmm. It was, most of the polling stations, they were empty. A lot of people chose to early vote. And that's what I'm hoping happens this time. I think it's very important for us to continue to break the records with early voting. It looks different in terms of you can't really do the door knocking. You have to be very careful about that. It's more of a virtual door knock now. In terms of fundraising will look much different now because you can't have a fundraising event, not live, you can have it virtually. But I'll say that, even before me deciding to run this race, I've seen other elected officials do an outstanding job with having their virtual meet and greets, doing their virtual door knock, making sure they still have that direct line of communication with most of their constituents. So, and the service never stops. So a campaign is a campaign, but, getting out there with the people, regardless if it's pandemic, never stops because it is our duty, whether you're an elected official or community advocate, to serve the public. And so you want to bring those resources to the people in the area or beyond the area that they really need during a pandemic. I was able to host 4 food drives in the month of October, where we fill safety kits for seniors on Martin Luther King Day. We're still out there serving the community because now the community needs us more than ever. And I would say in terms of education, when you look at education, when you look at higher education, you've had decreases in enrollment across the board, especially with students who may be low income, because they have different challenges. They have different challenges, and those challenges are exacerbated during a pandemic. So my goal is to continue to fight for equitable education and resources. And I want to do that by leveraging my resources, leveraging my relationships with community stakeholders to bring those beneficial resources to Prairie State College.
Do you feel that there's anything that Prairie State can learn from the city colleges of Chicago, like Chicago State, where you work at?
Okay, well, absolutely. I would say that, institutions of higher learning are economic engines for the community. And Chicago State University, which is a 4-year university, is the only 4-year PBI, predominantly Black institution in the state of Illinois, is an economic engine for the community. There was a recent economic impact study that showed that the university contributes $1.6 billion to the economy annually. And so what we need to do is kind of combine economic development with higher education. And when you think about workforce development opportunities, we need to expose these students to various options, career options. Also, dual enrollment programs, I think will help, is a great strategy or activity to drive enrollment. And like I said, enrollment has been affected across the board because it's hard for students now. Also, one of my concerns is the digital divide. I think it's important that we find a way to get the technology tools to these students that they need to be able to excel in their curriculum. And exposure to different career paths, exposure to a collegiate curriculum in the early formative years or in the high school years, I think is very important. So yes, some of the strategies that are utilized at the university level can be also utilized for community colleges, and that's what I plan to do.
Community colleges like Prairie State play such an important role for people in their lives, whether they're out of high school or going back to school for something. The former mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, once said that you kind of earn what you learn. And Prairie State College is a great way to get people on that track of a better paying career down the line.
Absolutely. And what that does is it strengthens our economy, and it strengthens the Southland economy because you got people who will go into the workforce and hopefully stay in Illinois, and they'll pay taxes here. They'll spend money here. And that's all part of the economic circle. So that's why Prairie State College District 515 is a community. It's a community that must work together to prosper and excel. And I think the trustees that are selected for this role by the people, I think that what's important for it will be for them to have diverse experience. I don't think there's a specific type of experience that works best for this role. I think when you have diverse experience, you have diverse perspectives. And that's how you find comprehensive solutions to problems.
Absolutely. One thing that you brought up a lot during the Senate campaign was the Peatone Airport. Could you give the audience, if somebody out there had never heard about the Peatone Airport, a little bit of the backstory, and then speak a little bit about your advocacy for the airport?
Sure. So the Peatone Airport, also known as the South Suburban Airport, this is something that's been going on for decades, honestly. And because of that, a lot of people in the community have kind of lost hope. You know, they've lost hope, saying, well, they're never going to let us get it. It's never going to happen. But honestly, we're closer than we've ever been to getting it, especially pre-pandemic. Now, of course, in terms of budgets and monies available, things have significantly changed because of the pandemic. But right before the pandemic, I mean, you think about the additional money, the millions of dollars that Pritzker was willing to put into the infrastructure, the roads leading to and from the airport. You have studies that has been done of major cities. All of them have 3 airports, but we don't, because I think there's a concern, a competition with the other airports. There's enough for everyone here. And then you can see all these Amazon fulfillment centers being built out here. A third airport, the airport in the South Suburban area will be, it will be extremely beneficial. When you think about jobs, you're talking about 15,000 direct and indirect jobs of every skill level. And that's just in year 1. You're talking about probably about year 10, like 50,000 new jobs. So yes, I am a big advocate of the South Suburban Airport. I think it's a project that would be transformative for the Southland economy.
And I'm sure in your time as community advocate, as I've done in my time as alderman, I've met people who live in Chicago Heights or Olympia Fields or Park Forest that commute to O'Hare Airport for a $15 to $20 an hour job. And they wouldn't have to do that if the Southland Airport was built.
Exactly. Exactly. And then when you think about Prairie State College and you think about workforce development, there's a potential for a partnership to occur between the airport and the students to get them opportunities. So, I mean, it's just limitless opportunities for this airport to happen. And, I'll continue to fight for that airport. And, I understand some of the concerns. I understand the concerns with farmland. I do, because I'm going to tell you, I'm an advocate of agriculture. I think agriculture is very important. Illinois is a leader in agriculture, especially with soybean production.
Back to Prairie State College, Monica. How many communities make up the district? What's the enrollment, if you know? And how do you foresee a way to either increase student population in the future if you are elected?
Well, there's 22 municipalities and villages that is in the District 515. Not sure of the exact enrollment, but I do know that the enrollment has decreased. But like I stated before, that's no different than many other institutions of higher learning. And you asked another question. I'm sorry. Did I miss it?
I'm sorry. You had broke up for a second. What was that?
You asked one more question, I believe. Did I answer all your questions?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Awesome.
Monica, so the last question we always ask our guests is, what are 2 books that you would recommend to the audience that have been important to you as a person or an advocate or a candidate?
Sure. I would say The Truths We Hold that was written by the current VP, National VP, Kamala Harris. And it chronicles her journey, and not just her journey, the difficult decisions she had to make in her career and why she made those decisions. And also I would recommend what I consider to be a business classic is From Good to Great by Jim Collins. Me coming from a business background, being in sales for over like 12 years, I would say that's definitely a book that I obtained a lot of wisdom, a lot of nuggets from. So I would definitely recommend
that. Monica, the Good to Great book, tell the audience a little bit more about that one, because that is a good one. I've read that in the past too.
Well, it's basically, like I said, it's a business book, and I used it as an example. I was writing down my goal statement for a fellowship that I start this weekend, and I in a goal statement I talked about what I want to gain from the fellowship, and one of the things that I want to gain is I want to get better at fundraising. Now, I've gotten some great fundraising experience from working for the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus Foundation, as well as doing fundraising activities and events for other legislators and even during my own campaign. But it's cool to be good, but I want to be great. And it's about putting forth that extra activity and making sure you enhance your development to get better. You're never too good. It's always opportunities to improve. And really it's about creating that plan of development to get you there. Even when you think about obtaining mentors, mentorship, I think, is a critical component of self-development. And I'm all about mentors, and I've been blessed to have great mentors in my life as well.
And a great thing about reading biographies and books like Good to Great by Collins is you can be mentored and experience something by reading books or listening to audio books or podcasts.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm telling you, George, this podcast that you're doing, I'm getting some professional development from it. I started just checking you out, and I'm like, okay, George. And so I'll continue to follow your podcast and get my nuggets from it. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for taking the initiative to spotlight important issues in the Southland, and also for interviewing various stakeholders in the Southland too. So thank you for being one of those stakeholders and supporting additional stakeholders.
Yeah, I just wanted to create a forum not only to express myself, but for other people to express themselves. I've always been a big fan of talk radio and podcasts. I think it's a really intimate experience because it's just, in our case, it's just me, you, and whoever's listening to this right now, right? So it's a great thing to do, and I'm glad to have people like you in the Southland doing the important work. And thanks again for the kind words.
Well, no, thank you, George, and I appreciate your advocacy as well in the Southland.
Monica, where can the people find out about your candidacy and you on the internet?
Sure, you can go to monicagordonforillinois.com. Also, I am on Facebook.
Great. Well, Monica, thanks again for coming on my podcast, and good luck in the election.
Thank you so much, George. You have a great evening, and it was great talking to you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my platform.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023. Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.
Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business. Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business, Chicago Heights, Illinois, despite some members of the council being absent, freezing weather and meeting remotely due to COVID restrictions. On Tuesday night, the Chicago Heights City Council approved a number of projects to continue moving forward the city's beautification projects. Architectural services. With Alderman Vincent Zaranti sitting in as acting mayor for Mayor David Gonzalez, the council approved an agreement for architectural services with Tria Architecture. Under the $23,000 agreement, TRIA will provide a space needs analysis of the municipal garage and water department facilities. The company will analyze existing facilities and determine whether an upgrade or a totally new facility is needed, based on current and future needs. TRIA has provided architectural services for other local municipalities such as Country Club Hills, designing its amphitheater, storage and fleet maintenance facilities, and upgrading its recreational center. Morton Arboretum Grant. The council voted to accept an award of $15,000 from the Morton Arboretum, through its Urban and Community Forestry Grant. The grant will pay for a tree inventory of the city. Funding for the grant is provided by the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program. It offers urban and community forestry grants to municipalities, which are required to pass a tree preservation/protection ordinance before the end of the grant period. Engineering services. The council also approved proposals totaling $842,000 for engineering services for various city infrastructure projects. Chief of Staff Karen Zarant said the projects include sewer and resurfacing work around the city. The council approved an agreement with Grand Capital, North America, LLC, to induce the sale and development of the city-owned real estate at 560 and 570 West Lincoln Highway. Jack Hines, city economic development consultant, said the parcels are the sites of the former Lorenzetti's restaurant and car lot next to it. Grand Rapid Capital has done a number of developments in the city. In other business, Chief of Staff Karen Zarant gave the council an update on January's Illinois Department of Public Health vaccination clinic, hosted by the city. She said about 250 people registered online. The city plans to hold another vaccination clinic, in conjunction with IDPH, in February. Chicago Heights Fire Chief Jeffrey Springer announced the promotion of Captain Tony Mascalino to Assistant Fire Chief. The council approved a redevelopment agreement to induce the sale of the city-owned surplus real estate at 1902 Euclid Avenue, through the city's Abandoned Property Acquisition Program. And the city's city towing services agreement was renewed. Freeze doesn't stop Chicago Heights City Council from taking care of business.